Hello and welcome to another episode of Cavell Cloud Conversations. I'm Finbarr, Senior Analyst at Cavell, covering the contact center space. And I'm joined today by Chris Morrissey, who is a VP and the head of Zoom Customer Experience. How are we doing today, Chris?
Doing great, Finbarr. Great to be here.
Brilliant. Now, we met up a few weeks ago at the Cavell CX Summit, which is obviously a large event in London dedicated to all things CX from the perspective of the industry. And you had a really good keynote, and there was this one phrase that sort of stuck with me from that, because you said that actually the CX industry is transitioning from a point where we talk about conversations to more of a narrative where we should be focused on completion. And, just to tee you up, I mean, what should the audience think about that phrase?
Yeah, it's great. Well, first of all, it was a great summit. So thanks for the invitation. There are a lot of great speakers at the event. But yeah, so that's Zoom's overall arching message right now is conversation to completion. And it certainly plays in the contact center, probably more than most, right? So if you think of every conversation a company has, or most anyway, right? Most conversations, whether it be internal or with a customer, there's usually a question or an action or a task, and it's generating work, right? And historically, after the conversation ends, a human would go and take those actions, right? I have to go update a system, I have to go shipping. But the way AI has evolved over the past several years, like those actions can be completed by AI. So in that conversation, in the moment, a task is identified or an action is required or a next step is involved, right? Complete that workflow automatically. So the human, even if it's a human to human call, right? It doesn't have to be all virtual agents, but you can have your human agents focus on the conversation, right? Those real true moments of connection. And then the agent, the completion is going to go and complete the workflows, right? The tasks, if you will. And that's where KPIs like after call work should disappear, because after call work is typically measuring all the work agents would have to do at the end of the call.
So really you're talking about two kinds of shifts. You're talking about the shift towards like virtual agent interaction, and you're saying, cool, you've built a great chatbot, it can speak to your customers, but what else does it do? And then also you're talking about the fact that when two humans are connecting, there's a whole load of other stuff that needs to happen, and maybe we don't have to do that anymore. So I mean, talk me a bit more through, like, if we think about traditional containment focused contact centers, what happens in an interaction versus, maybe I'll throw out the word agentic there. I'm sure people have heard it a lot, but more of an agentic model focused on that completion idea. I mean, what do the calls actually look like in those different worlds?
Yeah, it's there's a couple thoughts and questions in there, right? And good ones to bring up. So the agentic virtual agents these days are built with different models, right? So they're more human-like, they're not scripted. Like, so the original virtual agents, if you will. And there's a lot of them out there still, and it's probably why people have some bad impressions. And when I say people, both customers and brands have bad impressions with these virtual agents, is they're really intent-based flows, and you get stuck in these loops, right? Where your model, you have to pre-build what you think the customers are calling about. It's a billing issue, and this is the 55 ways my customer can explain a billing issue to me. And then it starts putting you down this path. And then if you're in the billing issue and you're like, actually, I want to change my address, right? So you're changing kind of topics.
Yeah.
It's going to say, great, what's your billing issue again, right? Because it's taking you kind of workflow of his billing, right? And so, that's why you can contain there, but you're not really resolving any issues, right? The way this works, like with the agentic going forward, is much more models involved. It's more complex, but that's where you get into the resolutions, where you have like thinking and critical thinking and reasoning and skills and tools and agents, right? All working together to perform a much more human-like, so you can switch topics and context. At the end of the day, I'd say I don't think customers, like people like us, when we call someone, we care, is it a virtual agent or a human agent? Are they using AI or not using AI? What we care about is, for a given call I'm calling about, did it resolve in the way that met my needs, right? That's how we look at it. And if that's all virtual agent, amazing, happy days, right? If that's start with a virtual agent and then it determines it's not resolving it, you elevate me to a human agent and resolves it, even better. And if it's all human agent, great. But I think it's not all or one. It's like based upon what the customer's calling about and the tools you have available, what should you do to provide the best customer experience?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that idea because, as you said, I mean, we've had automation in customer service for quite a long time. IVRs, enter your details, press 1 to get this. But restarting that journey requires going all the way back to the start or hanging up the call or coming back it again. Whereas really what you're describing is building another overlay system that can recognize when the customer changes their needs because something else has happened. And then within that journey, pivoting to a different direction. But I will say, so from our research, and I know I presented some of this at the summit, a lot of people have adopted some form of AI. They've trialed some form of AI. I think our research has 94%. Now, I'm not saying every one of those people has the most advanced AI system on the planet. I'd be shocked if they did. And only 12% of them say that they've actually got this autonomous end-to-end resolution of customer journeys in some capacity. So it seems like a lot of companies who are trialing AI are still running aground at that step of, okay, I've got an AI, it can talk to people, but I can't get it to do anything. So why is that happening, do you think?
It's a great question, and I think there's a lot of factors at play. One is there's still a lot of the funny thing is AI is changing so fast right now. It's
There's
hard.
a lot of,
When I say they have a old school agent, it's probably 2 years old, right? So
yeah, exactly. And it's
yeah,
much, much worse, like
yeah,
notably worse.
right. So some of them probably were early adopters, which is kudos to being an early adopter. But like early adopter and then pivot when the technology pivots. So if you're stuck in that kind of mode where you have the intent-based workflows, it's not going to be a great experience. It's not going to complete the actions, and they're probably a lot of people are experiencing that. Part of it too is don't try to boil the ocean when you come in. Is if you're get a very specific use case, and even if it's just a billing agent with a skill to change addresses, and then it can take the workflow, call the proper skills to update, address in the CRM and complete it. Then you'll see like these things happen very quickly because some of these agents can do very simple tasks, just FAQ or update fields, to very complex workflows that go on and on throughout the organization.
Now,
It's
that's something,
yeah.
if I can pivot slightly, because you've just reminded me of something, and you haven't, we haven't talked about this, but a little pivot. So I was at an event recently where someone actually advocated doing the opposite. So he said, if you start with your low-hanging fruit, then the CEO is going to think that AI is really easy. And he said, what you actually need to do is pick something, maybe not the most impossible thing, but pick something quite difficult.
Yep.
Let them build it. And then your CEO will understand that AI is not easy. What do you think about that instead? Because I mean, it's I haven't heard that from anyone except that one speaker. And the industry narrative is what you've said. It's find something that works, build it, and then scale up,
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of contrarian opinions, right? So I like that. But I don't think your goal is to show the CEO is easy or hard. It's to show that it actually delivers results, right? And whether your hard is not, right? If you can, but if you can show a result in a basic use case, right? And then now imagine this, right? Now,
yeah. Lead them down the path, as we say.
I think it's easier to it's a proof of concept, because everybody wants to be a believer, but they're skeptics, right? And it's someone's going to go. There's always going to be a NASA company out there where like, hey, trust me, I'm going to go to the moon, and they're like, okay, here's a lot of money, go make it happen, right? But the rest of the world is going to live in where like, let me show you I can actually fly a plane first, right?
So, yeah, absolutely. And I think that skepticism is kind of an important, because I mean, when we've talked about this before, there's a lot of AI language going around at the moment, and I've said before that I think a lot of the AI stamp getting put on products is just confusing a lot of companies. Right now, I know at the show you talked about cutting through the noise. You talked about all these different vendor taglines. I think you called it a sea of the same, and I did point out that Zoom does use a lot of AI messaging as well. So, I mean, should we be calling it AI first? Is it AI enabled? Should we be saying the word AI at all? Or should we be talking about what the technology does? I mean, where are we going wrong here?
So that's me actually being contrarian. Back to my earlier point, I like to be fairly contrarian. in part because I do think it's a sea of the same. I've been to several trade events and speaking engagements recently, and you walk out and you'll see 120 vendors, and you talk to customers, and they're genuinely fatigued with AI
Yeah,
for right.
sure.
They're fatigued, and I always put myself in the shoes of the customer, right, first. And if I walk out of the floor, I'm over, and I know what most of these vendors do, and I'm
Mm,
overwhelmed, right? Because I
yeah,
can't tell them apart.
yeah.
I'm like, that vendor used to do this, but now they're AI first, and this vendor, it's a little bit overwhelming. But the other thing I think it does is you're focusing on a technology, and I don't think that's what brands should do generally. This is, my thing. I think you should focus on what you're doing for your customers. And that's why, my contrarian viewpoint and that for the Zoom CX business is we're a CX first business. And the other part is technology will change with time, right? AI is absolutely, uh, yeah, the technology du jour, if you will, right? But, 10 years ago it was cloud first or cloud native, right? Or
Mm.
analytics first, analytics driven. I don't think you should put your technology first when describing what you do for customers. I think you got to put what you're helping them get done first. And then we are absolutely, the irony in that is right now we're investing significantly in AI. It's changing the
But
world.
you have to, I mean, you have to.
But like, you don't
Yeah.
have to go and tell a customer, what do you do? Well, we're AI first. Like they start tuning you out as soon as you start there, I think, right?
And I mean, from my perspective, because you think customers are tired, service providers are tired. The whole industry is to an extent. So I talked to a very large service provider in the UK who's been pitched 650 voice AI startup technologies in the past year. And they said, we've got one, it works. The rest of them can wait. And in 3 years' time, we'll see which of them are any good. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling that fatigue, you're not alone, I think, in that. But I think, as you say, getting down to that, and I think CX first is probably a good way of thinking about it, because it makes you change what you're building and goes back to the root of, SaaS in a way, which is, what is my customer pain point? I, as the technology provider, understand all the technology. And then on the back end, I decide what goes into the solution. And my customer gets a response. But I do think this is interesting because, again, going back to our surveys, which I like to talk about a lot, about 40% of people said that they only think about AI as a way to save money, cost, and the other option was, do you see it as a strategic thing or a competitive thing? And you see that almost half said, no, it's just about saving money. But I feel like that is a trap. I mean, I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, well, I think AI can definitely take cost out of a business, right? The question for the business is, what are you going to do with that savings? Are you going to pocket it, or are you going to reinvest it in your business, right? I think that's more the question. So absolutely, it can take cost out, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be looking at the technology if it didn't provide a better experience to take cost out. But I think, as opposed to like, how do I take this now and think about how I reduce heads? Because if you look at any news out there and you talk about some of these major leaders and major brands out there, and they're saying we slashed 4,000 heads because of AI, and that's the narrative that's being shared by fairly prominent, organizations and leaders out there. But there's also really, really good ones out there like IKEA, where the press is, we saved the jobs, or like the savings was equivalent to like 8,000 employees, but we didn't cut 8,000 employees. We retrained them for a new skill that actually generated like $1 billion in new revenue, right? So if you run out of ideas and your only job is to cut costs, then you can do that, right? For sure. If you want to continue growing, I would, you can reinvest it into your people to build new products, services, and differentiate.
But I guess the challenge is that if you're at a point where the only thing you can do is cut costs, you'd better be having the best customer service in the world. Because if you think that's all that you have left to do, well, your competitors probably aren't just sitting there thinking, well, if I can save some cash.
Well, I say is not only you better have the best customer service, and you better hope no one's going to make an other product or adjacent product or a better service, right? Because the market, it's freeing up time to do innovative things and be more creative and have more engagements and build new things, right? That's like, you take that money and you reinvest it in the business, right? Or you can get, like, if not all industries are growing, so like if you're in an industry where it's tight, you could take cost out as well.
Absolutely. So digging in a bit further to this idea of building on completion and getting under the hood of sort of what we talked about at the event. So, we've got this idea that agent skills and models will work together, but then what's actually happening from a sort of stack perspective, from a Zoom CX perspective, between when the customer says, "Hi, I'm calling about X," and the end result. Can we break down that a bit more? Because I know a lot of people still don't really understand.
Yeah.
They just know that it's supposed to work, right? But they don't understand the nuts and bolts of why.
Yeah, they don't like the magic answer. It's magic.
AI is magic, guys. You heard it here first.
No, it's more complex. I'll share it in kind of like in example terms, but there's a lot of ahead. But like you think of an agent as an employee, what is their job? Like if you're going to hire a sales agent or you're a retention agent, right? So that's kind of the framework or the primary job of the container, if you will. And then you have like the engines or models you talk about, LLMs, SLMs can be in there. And this is where all like the reasoning, the deep thought. So in the terms of a call, how this would work is someone calls in and then says they want to do something. So this model has to understand what's the intent of this call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really quickly, right? Then it says, okay, if the call is about I want to return something, okay, I have to go now trigger things. Like if it's a return, I need to go say, okay, are they eligible to return? Have I shipped the product yet? There's all these tools you start calling to check other systems, APIs, and then you get the answers back. And then the model has to like take that back and then formulate a human response back and then send it back. All this is happening very, very fast, right? Clearly. But that's what's happening. So you think of the agent as the primary job, the model is the reasoning, the thinking, and then the skills is out there, doing the work and giving it back to the model to give a human answer back to the customer in lay terms. Very easy.
And then I guess if we add in that concept of agentic, then we're actually talking with the idea that it's not a simple system that just understands one intent at a time. And I know, there are 4 rough key skills that form the basis of agentic. So it's memory, it understands what the customer said before and loops it back around. There's reasoning, it can make decisions based on what the customer said, like what their likely outcomes are. It can plan different actions and then it can orchestrate other systems. I think I've got those right. But of those, I mean, where are people? So I know certainly memory has always been a challenge. People are kind of getting quite good at surfacing that into the system. But where are people kind of finding the most difficulty at the moment? Is it in reasoning? Is it in getting the system to do stuff? Or is it in orchestrating different intents,
It's all of it working together. I think memory is actually more challenging than a lot because memory is a lot of things in memory going on, right? So you have memory of this conversation we're having right now. So, what are you calling about? So even if it's a long conversation, I'll get confused. So memory is what prevents your bot from sounding like Dory, like, 2 minutes into the call, asking you something that you've already answered. And then but if you go through, but also memory of like the state, right? If I've already authenticated you and then I have to go and do another task, I have to remember which stat, where you are in the state. I've authenticated you. I've confirmed this from you, right? So that's completed. Then there's the long-term memory. What are your past behaviors, right? And preferences and whatever you call about, right? So that's longer term. And then there's the memory of, you have episodic memory, which is like episodic of how many times have I talked to you? What do you like? What are your preferences? What is happening in this call? And then procedural, which is now if you're calling about a billing issue, here's the process I follow so I can trigger that process off right away, keep that in memory so it happens fast. So I think memory is actually one of the hardest because you don't want to get like context rot in your bot where you're throwing everything and looking at all your data in your CRM by Finbarr every time he calls, right? That would be bad. So memory is the hard part because that's the part where you you make it personalized and fast and true. But the tasks, the skills, those are the ones that actually do the action, right? Now I go and update the CRM and kick off this workflow and use these APIs and do these calls. So you need all of it working together. It's like an orchestration, right? And you're also using AI in like noise suppression for your phone call. You can't get there's AI used a lot in the not just in the LLMs, like the models get all the hype, I think, right? They get
There you go.
Everyone talks about the models, but there's a lot of other things happening that actually add more complexity sometimes because there's so many models out there right now, right? And I think those costs are going to come down faster than other components of the AI.
Certainly what I've seen, and I think you'll agree with this, is that there's so many moving parts, but one of the places where people are actually having to invest a lot of time, and it kind of ties into that idea of orchestration. It's understanding not only what the customer wants, but then figuring out where I need to go to get the information, where I need to go to, what tasks I need to spin up to solve their problem. So I know that people are building a lot of, reach into other systems.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, like, for the majority of people listening, I mean, how important is that reach into CRM, shipping, data lakes? I mean,
Yeah. Extremely important in my opinion. That's what so that's what like, the skills of the tasks will do. They'll go in through APIs or other means to get access to these MCP servers or A2A, right? Get access to some of these datas. And but that's where if you think about customer, like what's happening in the call is real time, right? That's the engagement level, but all the context around company policies, where your order number lives, shipping information, inventory lives in other systems. So you need to be able to access that to understand what to do and take actions and answer the questions properly. Because if the only thing a virtual agent did really good was FAQ, and then you just gave someone a list of work to do at the end of the call, you didn't complete anything. So that's why I think the tasks and access to those systems are extremely important to actually get the content you need to handle the engagement, but then finish all the workflows after it, like the after call work. And you don't want your LLM getting access to all those systems. That's what like the skills and tools do. Like they'll go get access through a secure mean and then just give the model what it needs, not open up your entire data source to an LLM.
Yeah, and also maintain the boundaries around how much the LLM has to process as well, right? I mean,
Yeah, boundaries, security. There's a lot of
going on there. But I guess that does raise another interesting question, though, which is, I mean, all of these systems obviously have their own user interfaces. They have their own access points. They're their own pieces of technology in their own right. And I know that when we talked about this in the past, you've put AI at the center of CRM, ticketing, CCaaS, UC. Do we have a separate category at the end of this journey, or do we just have, I solve customer service, I pull data from here?
Yeah.
Like, what's your vision for where we go for all of these different systems?
Yeah, it's I've had that vision in my head for a while now. It's like the four circle Venn diagram, right? The system, the contact center, the UC, right? CX, and then you have ticketing and CRMs all kind of coming together. I think AI is going to make that happen faster. I think absolutely new categories will be created. My analogy for those of us that have been in the industry for probably too long is if you go back long enough, there was a WEM only, right? Workforce engagement management, analyst, and then they had cloud contact center, and then you had a separate one for speech analytics, and then you used to have one for workforce management. Right? They start kind of converging where most CCaaS vendors, not all, but most today have workforce management, quality management, and all that in the cloud. So these categories kind of collapsed and became CCaaS, right? I foresee similar things happening. I don't think forever you'll have virtual agents versus human agents versus phone versus CCaaS. Like it's all a communication. How do you communicate with your customers, and how do you track information? But I see those things collapsing now. How that looks, don't know yet, right? But I do see collapsing. I don't think you'll see a lot of point solutions for much longer, which is part of the problem. To your point, is there's so many point solutions out there right now. The market is flooded with point solutions. That I don't think the trend is going to be more point solutions, going to be less. So that's something to just be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of companies they've had their point solution for a long time. They're not ready for the disruption that's coming, but I guess it's time to start reading about it and get ready in many ways.
Yeah. I mean, there's still people that have premise phone systems and see contact centers out there today, right? So
there are. Yeah. Depending on, I mean, we forecast this sort of thing. So depending on the country and the world you're in, there are either a lot or there is a shrinking number. But it depends.
More than one.
Yeah. Like in our forecast, if you look at somewhere like the US, the number of people with a cloud, with an on-premise, contact center is just, it is dropping quite considerably.
Yeah, it's yeah, but look how fast that happened. What was it? 2010 or 10 years ago, rather, where you think, or maybe a little before that, when it really started taking off, and then
Yeah. And now we're talking about those use cases which won't move rather than which ones will. Is there a 10% of the market that will never move off premise because security or regulatory or some reason that they have to.
So fast forward 10 years from now, here's a question: is if you were talking to your customers and doing surveys, how many people do you think would say, I'm not using AI in my contact center?
Well, I know how many. I mean, what I said earlier, 92% are already saying they are.
Yeah.
Right. So none. But I think the question then becomes a lot more interesting is, I don't know, Cavell's personal thought about this is that in 10 years' time, who cares? Right? In 10 years' time, the word AI will not have the same financial weight that it does today with the markets and things like that. Every company we speak to spins out a percentage of their revenue as their AI revenue. That becomes, it's just going to be back to, this is our product. Does it? Of course, it has some AI components because it all does. And we can go back to talking about, no, this is my call recording product. Obviously, it transcribes things. Every call recording product, just table stakes again, really. So that's a long-term forecast. For the moment, AI everywhere. We'll talk about it until we don't talk about it anymore.
Yeah. So long-term planning takes on a different meaning in this day and age than it did a while ago.
Yes, because I mean, realistically, who knows what it's going to look like in 3 years' time? I was using this is off topic, but I was using Fable 5 for about 2 weeks before it went fully onto usage on Claude, right? And it was great. It's really good. Like, it's proper step up. And I decided not to turn on the usage credits because I know that in like 6 months' time, I'll probably get it for free. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to pay X amount a month now to use it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, it comes down, the prices come down.
Yeah, exactly. So, one of the big ideas I want to talk about as we start to think about wrapping up. So we talk about all of these changes in the contact center. And one of the things that is changing is this evolution of contact center from, this vertical business unit. The contact center manages customer service. It doesn't do anything else. The data is locked within that system. But you think that actually the trajectory is more broadening out, more horizontal. Do you want to explain that a bit?
Yeah, so the analogy I give is historical, the vertical department, and if you think of an org chart, I was thinking you have a contact center team and they operate off to the side in their own org, and as long as you're keeping customers happy, you do your job, I'll do mine. We don't have to intercede anywhere. I think where this is going, and it should go, frankly, is the voice of the customer. All those touch points your agents are having with your customer. There's the amount of insights and information is so strong there that you should take those insights and spread it horizontally, where the voice of the customer that might happen in the contact center is shared horizontally. So every leader, every strategic decision you're making has the voice of the customer at the root of it, like their feedback. What do they like? What do they don't like? What are your competitors doing? Like, you'll get all that stuff. And then you take that. So your product team and your marketing team and your sales team and your finance team is using those insights to make decisions. And with AI, you can get those insights much more readily. It needs to be contextual and all that, but for sure, I think it should. That's my concept of CX. It's a strategy, not just as a vertical department analogy. And I think with the switching costs as consumers, for us to switch brands very easily, customer experience is going to be the battleground for a lot of companies. So every department needs to look at what your customers are saying, for sure.
So in practice, we're just talking about the CX system being able to issue a report for any part of the business on what's going on. If you have the credentials as the head of the finance team and you want to report on which products are selling the best, you should just be able to get that, right?
Yeah, and then it's a systems change, and then it's also probably a leadership philosophy, because now that you have access, is your business using it, right? Getting access and insights are two different things.
Yeah. Interesting. So the last thing you talked about on stage at the event was we've done all this completion work. We're at a stage where, look, we're focused on customer outcomes. And then you threw out another two words, which was decision intelligence. So, can you unpack that a bit for us? So once we've done completion, what is that next step?
Well, that's these agentic AI solutions are all like self-learning. It's a loop, right? It's a learning loop. But the decision intelligence, really, that's the model, that's the decision, that's the intent, understanding the intent. What's the sequence of events I have to complete these tasks? What tools do I need to call, right? That's the decision, that's the model, that's what the model is doing for you, right? And then there's an observe, it's like something observing it and see how did it work and how do I optimize this process? And so it goes back to the model. So the model is always learning how to optimize that process. But that's really the decision intelligence is the model itself. And then how do you complete the workflows and do you have the right skills or connections to complete it?
No. So it's the system telling you what it's learning and then helping you make it better itself, right? Pushing output that says, hey, if I did this, you might get this sort of use case solved.
Yeah, and as all these things working together, which is, it's the memory with the decision and which tools, right? Which systems might integrate to complete the tasks, so, what you need to get done to complete. If you have no integrations to any other platform, you're not completing anything. You're just answering questions, right? So all of them are so important to work as a system and then continually self-improve.
Yeah. I mean, I personally fully buy into this vision of, integrated, agentic, all these systems coming together to learn from each other. But if we drill down as the final sort of question to you, I talk to a lot of companies in a lot of different stages of adoption of these technologies. Legacy stack, board doesn't really understand the technology. They want it. They don't really know how to get it. Lots of different vendors out there. So you're one of those companies. We put ourselves into those shoes for a minute. You like this idea, but you've still got some on-prem, some legacy cloud, and a board to deal with. Where do you start? Where do you go from?
Yeah, I think I go back to the contrarian versus the mainstream thought here is, do you go and say, I'm going to put someone on Mars and trust me and give me time and money to prove it to you? Or do you say, let me show you how I can, drive down the street safer, better, and save money, right? And so I would make it small. I would suggest if you're in that place, take small examples. Small examples doesn't have to be a full front, like virtual agent, end-to-end workflow completion and all that. It could be something like just take the initial call and understand why they're calling, authenticate them, right? So by the time the human agent gets the phone call, you don't have to go through the basic information, multi-factor authentication. So as soon as the human gets engaged, you're like, it's just a very free-flowing conversation. Like, if you did that, you're going to have a better customer experience. The agent's going to be happier because they're not doing kind of the mundane stuff. And so but set expectations properly. Don't say I'm going to go to Mars, and if you miss, you're kind of just floating around in space lost.
Yeah.
Versus like if you miss, you're like, it didn't. I'm sorry, let's try something else. You have enough trust to pivot and try something different, right?
Yeah, and I think for me, things that really underscore it. I spoke to one company who had 20% of the calls coming into their voice bot were escalated, and they just decided, okay, let's review those call logs. Put a bit of intelligence into all of them, and then say what are the 10 things that get talked about the most on the front end as they come in. And then they upgraded their FAQ answering bot to be able to answer those 5 queries more consistently every time. Escalations dropped from 20% to 5%, right? So there are these ways out there, I think, for every business where they can make a jumping off point into this world. And I think that is a key message to take away.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the use case you gave is one of our use cases, by the way. I love that one where if you start in a virtual agent and it can't contain, right? The goal shouldn't be containment, it should be resolution, right? So if you can't solve, get it to a human agent, right? Because I can solve it, human agent. And then the human agent answers the questions. And sometimes their questions are answered because just they've been around for a long time and they know how to do it. Like sometimes it's just knowledge from being there and it's not documented. And then like the way the Zoom virtual agent system works is like it understands, didn't resolve human agent answered it this way. I'm going to automatically create knowledge for you to fill the gap. right? And with human in the loop to accept or not accept. So all that'll be automated for you when it's a one platform. So it'll always get better.
Yeah. The supervisor gets a box that says, okay, well, Finbarr said that we give a 10% discount if this thing happens. Is
Yeah.
that true?
It,
And either
exactly.
I'm in trouble or we add it to the knowledge base as a way to fix it every time, right?
Yeah. Either way, the company's going to find something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, do you have any sort of final thoughts, or I think it's been a really interesting discussion.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time to be in the market. I would say to brands out there, definitely, try to get through the AI hype, fatigue. But it's here to stay. It's going to get better. And think of it. How do you want AI to work across your organization in the customer experience world? Not in different points, right? And if you think broader than in long term, you make sure you're making decisions today that don't get you into AI silos like you did in data silos a long time ago. That would be some of my thoughts.
Absolutely. Well, it's fascinating. Well, this has been the Cavell Cloud Conversations podcast. I'm Finbarr Beckley. Thank you, Chris, for joining me. Obviously, if you're interested in anything Chris has said, Zoom contact centers out there. You've probably already used Zoom as a platform. Go give it a try, give them a call, see what happens. If you like this podcast, do just, tell your friends, like it, share it. Anything you want to do really helps us out. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening. Thank you again, Chris, and we'll speak to you all very soon.